Thanks everyone for making it. Good morning and welcome. First off, thank you for taking the time to join us today. We will have more people that are coming over here in the next minute or so. But just so we can be clear here, this conversation is very timely. It's a very important conversation. We're going to be covering a handful of topics. So if you're like me, you have a notepad and a pen, because I'm old school and I like to do that thing. So we know everyone's calendar is packed. We appreciate you making the time. Today's discussion is brought to you by SlimTech. Slim helps businesses uncover hidden savings across technology, telecom, mobility, utilities, so they can reinvest those dollars into growth, spend less, invest more. Thank you, SlimTech, for bringing this timely event together. We all know that technology is moving fast and that most organizations are trying to figure out how to adapt. Just a few years ago, AI was something we talked about as the future. Well, the future is here now. AI is writing proposals, analyzing data, building software. At the same time, cyber threats continue to become more sophisticated. Cyber criminals are using AI, employees are using AI, your competitors are using AI, and your grandmother may also be using AI. Whether your company has a formal strategy or not, AI is already inside of your business and probably has been for quite some time. That creates tremendous opportunity, but it also introduced new risk around security, governance, compliance, data privacy, decision-making. The list goes on. And not too long ago, these were just IT's problems. Not anymore. These are now leadership problems, boardroom conversations. They're conversations that every business owner and executive team should be having, and that's why we want to host this chat today. Our goal isn't to scare or overwhelm anyone with technical jargon. This is going to be more conversational. It's time to have an honest conversation about this. So we've assembled a fantastic group of experts to help us navigate that discussion. Joining us today, we have Jason Stein, the VP of Cybersecurity for SlimTech. Jason works with organizations across a wide range of industries and has unique perspective on how businesses are approaching AI. We're also joined by two outstanding leaders from Intelligent Technical Solutions, ITS. We have Rob Schenk, the Chief Strategy Officer at ITS, where he leads strategic growth, cybersecurity, innovation, operational excellence, and the responsible adoption of AI. And we have Sean Harris, the Chief Risk and Compliance Officer at ITS. Sean leads the security division and serves as a virtual CISO, helping organizations build governance, risk, and compliance programs that executive teams and boards can understand, support, and fund. So gentlemen, thank you all for being here. For everyone joining us today, we encourage this to be interactive. Feel free to put your comments, thoughts, notes, questions in the chat as this goes along, and we'll get to them. And we'll do our best to address everything in a timely manner. We have this carved out for an hour. So with that being said, we'll hand it over to Jason Stein, who will be moderating today's discussion. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Tim. There's so much going on today from a cybersecurity perspective, and we're seeing a lot of trends. So what we're hoping to do is give you industry insights, trends that are resonating, what's Forbes saying, what's Gartner saying, what's Deloitte saying, what are the engineers saying that we're working with, and what are clients struggling with, and what are they consuming today. So one of our great suppliers is ITS. And so what I wanted to do to start the conversation is allow ITS to give you a little bit of a background as to who they are, why they're relevant in this space, and why you should lean on them for some of your cybersecurity initiatives. So with that being said, Rob, Sean, why don't you take us through the background of ITS?
Great. Well, thank you. Appreciate the opportunity and great to speak with everybody out there today. A couple notes on ITS. We have been around since 2003, roughly around 400 employees, about 13 cities across the U.S., mainly Seattle, West Coast, down Southwest. Got Texas that just came on board, and we have some East Coast presence as well. I have a 24/7, 365 security operations center, help desk. I've got our SOC 2, Type 2, as well as HIPAA compliance satisfactions. As far as like average client retention, on average, 8.5 years. We've had zero kind of network-wide breaches for clients that are on our ITS secure platform. Effectively what we do is that we kind of manage the bridge between security, compliance, and IT teams that maybe for organizations that are big enough to have real obligations, but not quite big enough to staff for all of them. Three main pillars: cybersecurity, so 24/7, 365 SOC, as I mentioned, MDR, XDR, managed detection and response, advanced penetration testing services, and as Jason had mentioned, virtual chief security officer or vCISO compliance related services. We've serviced at this point 62 different frameworks: CMMC, HIPAA, FTC safeguards, PCI, and also work with companies in a fully managed situation or co-managed, where we kind of work with existing IT teams. One other kind of differentiator for us is that we do a lot of merger and acquisition due diligence. So for companies that are on the M&A track and they would like to measure risk of a potential acquisition before bringing that in, we look at that from several different angles. So effectively, if it touches risk or operations or compliance, ITS is that one team that owns that outcome and prevents any gaps between vendors. Scott, Sean, anything else you want to add to that?
I think that covers most of it. I think, the big differentiator of what we can offer is really just, hands-on experience in both sides, both the assessment and penetration testing side, but we also know what needs to be done to actually meet those requirements and to put it in, implement and operate it. So
Sounds good. So Jason, kind of pass it back to you. We'll keep the conversation going.
Awesome. So as Tim mentioned, we have a chat over here, and you can either chat and post a question to everybody, or you can post it just to the hosts and panelists, and then we'll get it. We won't single you out. Want to make this interactive. So what's interesting, as we start to head into 2026, there's no silver bullet from cyber, and everyone's different. Everybody on this call has a different team. They struggle with different things. They have different things that are implemented. What I want to talk about is one of the biggest challenges this year is vendor sprawl. Everyone's got lots of different OEM technologies. They struggle with, how do you get everything to work together? How do you get the workflows to seamlessly integrate? And then, there's gaps in technology, and some people have more money to spend and some people have less. Rob, Sean, what's one of the biggest surprises and trends of 2026 that, as you're talking to customers, that they're engaging with ITS saying, here's a need that we have?
So maybe I'll kind of start off on the trend side. So a very common trend that we're starting to see is kind of consolidation of tool sets. If you look at most small, mid-sized businesses, they have a plethora of tools on order. Usually it's 15, 20 plus tools. They don't necessarily all talk together. And then every gap between these tools is, effectively an attack surface that a threat actor can go after. So we're seeing a trending towards kind of consolidation of platforms, real integration across those tool sets, one accountability owner. And that's really kind of where our kind of layered defense model really kind of comes into play. We're also seeing trends around kind of detection. We're seeing we're seeing it move from kind of tooling to operations, where like, hey, buying the platform wasn't really the hard part. It's really like, how do you staff it? How do you tune it? How do you respond at 2 a.m. in the morning when some attack has happened? We're also seeing, just continued use of AI, acceleration of AI, and it's being largely seen on both sides of the equation. We're seeing this on the attacker side. They're, creating these flawless phishing emails. We're starting to see deep fake voice fraud more and more these days, automated reconnaissance. And then on the defender side, we're seeing, AI-driven more detection tools in place. We're seeing kind of agentic use in our security operations center. That's kind of driving down some of the noise. So I think those are kind of the biggest trends that I'm seeing. The other thing, as far as like, kind of services are related, that, big interest in AI. A lot of CEOs are going down that path, trying to deploy AI for differentiation purposes, competitive speed, acceleration, increased productivity, increased revenue, more visibility around potential client churn, things like that. But it's largely not being aligned with proper visibility on the cyber platform, tooling side of things, and AI governance. So that, ideally, we're starting to see more movement towards consolidation of the AI governance and cybersecurity visibility and controls. mapped with or mapped across to that AI use that CEOs are largely driving. So I'll kind of pause there. And Sean, if you want to add anything to that.
Yeah, I think you touched on a good one there. For many years, we've been seeing people that have to meet certain frameworks or regulatory requirements. CMMC is a big one, right? That was coming up to a big deadline that got suspended in November. They still have to meet the requirements, right? They're just not going to have an assessor come in. That was the change to it at the moment. But we always saw them come in, and they, especially if they're going to be assessed, they were very interested, the clients, in not just how do we say that we're doing it, but how do we show that we're doing it, which is really the functional, what you really want from your program, right? You don't want it to be this shell. You want it to actually make you more secure. The difference that we've seen is kind of what Rob just touched on, is AI is bringing in some of those organizations that maybe aren't compelled with that, but they maybe had some vibe coding that was happening, or someone's coding that isn't part of the programming team, or maybe they never had a development team. It's maybe a director of a department or something, and they're introducing things that are super useful through AI, like different new apps or things that help them look at what they're doing. Maybe it's for clients, but they're doing it in a way that secure software design lifecycle or developers have already kind of tackled that. Hey, that's going to cause a problem. Like, you don't have any kind of safeguards on it. You don't have any guardrails. Once it does get stood up, have you thought through what happens if it's not available? Are you the developer now? Are they going to call you at 2 a.m., Mr. CEO, that just made this thing that's super great for your company? And so we didn't hear them at first. A bunch of them, some are very forward leaning, go, hey, we got to look at this ahead of time. We don't want to just unleash AI into all of our stuff. The security through obscurity, or the idea that we have so many documents that someone looking for it's not going to find it, that's all gone now with AI, right? You can immediately, once it's in your systems, you can immediately find it. So we're finding more people that are leaning into, like, that's refreshing for me as a CISO, where it's not just compelled by a whip, right? It's more of a carrot of, hey, these are really cool things that we want to do in our company. And we've watched some other companies maybe take some wrong steps. You hear about it in the news, right? Where they've wiped out a whole area or of their organization because they let AI do something that it maybe shouldn't have. And so putting in those guardrails, that's been an interesting part of 2026 for sure.
So let's double down on this AI conversation. It's a fad. It's going to go away like a BlackBerry or an AS400, right? So when we start to think about AI, it's a $700 billion conversation this year, according to Deloitte and Forbes. But what's interesting is the crossover between AI and moving into agentic AI and improving those workflows that we talked about. How is ITS helping clients with agentic AI, with AI governance, as you guys both mentioned, which I was just in Seattle and it came up 5 times in client meetings, and then securing AI? What are you doing to help make sure that we're securing it from clients, from our users, from our employees, from itself?
Yeah, I mean, I can start off on that one. There's a whole series of things that can be done, and the thing is, it's nothing new, right? It's not a newly invented process. It's something that we've been doing as CISOs for quite a long time. It's a standard process that we do. Same with the development side of it. If you're standing up things, nothing of that is new either. There's secure software design life cycles that have been out there for quite a while. So specifically what we're doing is we're looking at, hey, do you have an administrative policy in place telling people what they're supposed to be doing? And that's, if you don't have that first, then you haven't even told your employees exactly how they should be functioning with AI. So that's your first CYA absolutely need to get done. And is that administrative policy up to date? Many organizations we're talking to, they may not have it, or they created it a couple of years ago when ChatGPT was popular and they haven't really looked at it or enforced it. Do you have shadow AI happening? That's a very common thing right now. There's a whole bunch of, shadow IT being IT that you don't really understand. Maybe people are benefiting from, but you don't know the risk. It's not usually paid for by your organization. People are bringing in their personal accounts. That's happening a lot with AI right now across every sector. And so how much of your information is getting put into these other personal accounts or accounts that aren't controlled by the organization? So there are tools to see that too. So that's something we're doing with our clients. How do we see that? And how do you make the policy actually successful? If I put an administrative policy in that doesn't take into account what my engineers or my salespeople are able to do, if this is such a change to what they're doing, their workflow, which it has been, it has really, really sped up what people can do, like creating reports and finding analysis. And there's all kinds of amazing things that AI can do. Well, if we don't incorporate that into the policy isn't going to be very enforceable, or we're going to fire everybody, right? They're going to just keep using the things that they're using. And so we have to make it actually work. So that's a huge part that we're doing. And then in order to have these smart agents in your environment and these AI, and I might be getting too technical, so I'll pull back if we are, but to get these AI things in, there are within your tenants, like Microsoft, for example, is a very common provider that a lot of people have. There's a whole bunch of tools that they already have that you might already be licensed for that maybe isn't turned on. And then there's additional, Microsoft, they'll sell you additional licenses, of course. There's additional things that you can upgrade into, and specifically it's Purview, and there's a couple other things in there. And so that's what we're doing with our clients. Say, hey, all the tools that you have connected, are they secured properly? Are you doing the basics like turning off training on your data, right? Are we meeting our obligations, that policy that we build? We don't just make up something, right? We look at what are your contracts, what are your industry specific standards, what does your insurance say you need to do? And there's a bunch of things that dictate a floor on exactly what can be acceptable in your organization. And so then we start from there. Now, what are you comfortable with? And I think that's the part that we found is there's two sides to this that I've watched quite often. One side is small, nimble organizations that just lean into it, and they might crash and burn because they're doing things that they're letting everybody do everything all at once. Or I see the other side, which are maybe less nimble organizations or more conservative. They're afraid to put this in their environment, and they really need that understanding that, hey, once we connect this, let's say Claude or something into their environment, is it going to be able to read everything? Is this individual that connected it now have access to HR data? Well, if you don't have logging and monitoring of some sort turned on, if you don't have the right permissions, you may not even know. Like, you have no way to actually know. So those are the things that we're actively doing. Now, that's the securing it portion. We also have a team, and Rob's on that team, where we're actually helping proof of concepts. And there's a lot of things that people don't understand that they can do for their organization when it comes around AI. It's kind of, I think we're still in that phase right now, right? Where every organization is figuring out exactly how AI forward they can get. And is it a, I know you're joking, right? But is it a trend or not? I mean, there's a lot of investors out there right now too. They're asking that, like, when are they going to show a profit? What is this, another .com bubble going on,
Yeah. And just to add a couple thoughts to that. I think it's really like, Sean mentioned that kind of the two sides of that extreme. What we're trying to do is like, hey, what's that juicy middle in there where you can get the best output of best potential out of your AI investment and leverage that, but do that in an aligned, secured, and intentional way with a governed approach. And those companies that kind of are able to kind of align and join those are going to be the most successful at the end of the day. The other thing I'm seeing is, like, with regards to, shadow AI, we're seeing a ton of that. And we're seeing a lot of free and personal use in organizations, and information is typically leaving the organization. And that's where, like, having that visibility about what's actually happening within your environment, because typically it's going to be underestimated. Having that awareness really kind of sets the stage for a lot of the stuff that Sean was mentioning. I think it really comes back to, level of creativity at the end of the day, when you're approaching your AI initiative, and what are some workflows and agents that I can start to integrate and implement into my business. And the other thing we're starting to see a large trend is around how best to control AI cost. Because here's one thing, like, for folks that have leveraged, hey, I got a enterprise ChatGPT or Claude account, those subscription costs are going up pretty dramatically. I think it was like Uber blew through their entire AI budget in 3.5 months this year. And now they're starting to kind of rework, how do I strategically implement AI? Am I able to do a company-wide AI rollout in a cost-effective manner? The answer is you can. We work with a centralized platform that allows us to kind of corral AI use and provide flexibility for companies to be able to use multiple models and provide additional connectors to other systems, right, on Microsoft 365, for example, or other kind of sales marketing related tools. Give employees literacy training in a controlled environment that gives them opportunities to use multiple models, depending on what that use case is, and arm them with the flexibility to go ahead and start leveraging the systems so we can identify those manual, frustrating kind of tasks that we all do on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, that if I can go ahead and accelerate through AI, 30%, 50%, or automated 100%, that has huge impact and ROI for a business. And so being able to unlock those really drives success in the AI space. We're getting a lot of businesses kind of on that track. That's been pretty cool to see.
If you're on this call and you're struggling with AI, agentic AI, you need help securing it. We at SlimTech can definitely be a resource. You don't feel like you have to do it alone. Sean, you touched on investors, and I know, we have some people in the financial sector here too. As you start to move into the board of directors, a lot of investors, a lot of financial backers, and they're starting to put together cybersecurity committees to advise the board. According to Forbes, last year it was 40% of boards had a cybersecurity committee, a risk committee. Now it's up to 60%. And so if you're an IT decision maker, you're a security person on this call, and you're not part of that committee, then that committee is going to be made without you, and you don't want that to happen. So as we start to talk about boards care about a couple different things. So let's talk about GRC. We already talked a little bit on the G, the governance. The risk and the compliance is super hard. So, one, boards care about risk. We have internal risks, we have external risks, we have employee risks, we have client risks. I want you to touch on the risks to organization, and then let's talk about compliance. I sat down with an $8 billion company, and I talked to him a little bit about, what do your guys complain to you the most about? And he said, compliance. We don't. My guys didn't go to school to study compliance, but it's a necessary part of the business. We need compliance in order to stay in business and to adhere to all those things like CMMC and FedRAMP and all the other ones that are out there. So, guys, what is ITS doing to help clients get better visibility with GRC, specifically to the risk and the compliance? How are you helping in both those areas?
Yeah, I can kind of start that. I think fundamentally boards don't want a bunch of tech talk. They want, what's my exposure in dollars? What's the likelihood? I want to know if I'm going to lose a potential contract, if I'm going to get a denied claim, if I have to report a particular breach. So they want to see risk assessments that are mapped to some kind of framework, usually NIST, CSF, or other. I want to see my risk register. I want to see reporting rhythm. I want to see what's the trajectory of where the business is going from a cyber perspective, not a list of just new problems that are being sent to me every quarter. One thing we're commonly seeing is that no one really owns cyber risk within most organizations. So we try and fix that ownership when we get started with companies. Kind of a quick story of how this kind of manifested. We had brought on a large healthcare rural hospital, and they were in the middle of an EHR migration when we started working with them. And we did a kind of some due diligence on that project rollout and discovered that they actually had not built into the plan an MFA rollout. So they're rolling out an EHR with no MFA. We're like, whoa, back up here. This is, if you guys had an issue here, this is going to be a board level event. So being able to kind of provide visibility to that level and really kind of prevent a bigger issue is one of the areas that would kind of help out clients just kind of understand that risk, have clear understanding of what we're facing, and then appropriate mitigations to go ahead and reduce that risk over time. Sean, pass it over to you.
Yeah, personally been in quite a few of those committees or advising the committees, right, as an outside party. I think what Rob said, definitely it has to be in terms that actually matter. And quite frankly, for most organizations, that comes down to dollars and cents, right? And that's what the risk is measured in. And so when doing a risk assessment, any kind of framework is required. Some are required, right? But most of the time it's just so that we can have a standard to look at it and make some sense of it. So it's not different every time you do it. And so I think that's the most critical thing, is it's put in business terms. We look at the risks and we measure the likelihood and impact of that risk as it relates to dollars. We then report on it in a measurable way, meaning monthly, quarterly, whatever that cadence needs to be. It's usually at least quarterly for a board. And we do it in a way that's consistent each time so they can know, are we doing better or worse? There's some kind of tracking over time. And I think, there's only so many chips that every organization has to put on the board each year. And that's part of planning, right? You're doing that risk assessment. Here are risks. How are we going to spread our dollars out and to get the most bang for our buck? And oftentimes a good CISO can actually lower costs. And that kind of goes back to your vendor consolidation. And sometimes there can be knee-jerk reactions or things that are done around security that are higher up on the tree that we haven't actually taken on the most impactful things that we should first. A good example of that is I've had organizations that I've dealt with that have really very specific, complicated programs in place for securing certain programs, like actual applications. And yet, their security awareness training for their end users, their soft targets, right, is maybe in place, but nobody's tracking it. It got started by somebody in HR or training, and nobody's saying, hey, is this still effective? Are people getting it done? So those are things that, having that holistic picture for the board, putting it in dollars and cents that makes sense, that's a risk assessment. Risk assessments are extremely valuable. Every organization should be doing them at least once a year. And the whole point of that is to boil it down into specific, impactful statements in a way that's grounded in reality. Because there are many things we're going to look at and go, you know what, the likelihood of that just isn't high enough. And given the other things that we have on here, we need to do this first. A penetration test can also do that. I've had several internal directors say, hey, I just keep communicating this way and they don't really see it. We now need to kind of show them what would happen, right? And a penetration test being something where risk assessment might be more like a vulnerability assessment where you're walking around the house, as an example, you're saying, hey, that window's open on the top floor. Down below, there's a bush here. Someone could break in and nobody would know. Maybe we clear that out, right? Doing that assessment. A penetration test is one in which you actually climb in that window on the top floor and you say, hey, there was a wallet on the table next to the window and there was $1,000 in there. And so I'm using that as an analogy, but essentially that's what we're doing when we do penetration tests is we're putting it in dollars and cents that impact them specifically, a good report. And the same thing with the risk assessments. And that's really the reality that you have to bring to those boards because they're too busy. They don't want to get into that. There's too many things to handle. So we need to know what are the things that are going to bite us.
I love that. So one, we can help you, especially if you're an M&A, put together pen tests, risk assessments, cybersecurity assessments, making sure that anybody you're acquiring before you add them to the fold is clean. And so there's a lot of different ways we can help. So as we talk about risk, the biggest risk to the organization is your own internal employees. Let's face it, with 3.4 billion spam emails sent out every single day, I get about 3.2 billion of those. I don't know about the rest of you guys, but let's talk about UEBA, User Entity Behavior and Analytics. And Sean, you touched on analytics and why that's so important. And we care about the analytics so much more than we used to. Passwords. The average employee uses the same password to log into all their things. How do we prevent that? When we think about passwordless identity and access management, it says that over 60% of organizations are looked to get rid of passwords using facial recognition, using the study and behavior of the way that you position your mouse, the keyboard cadence, things like email security, not enough, especially with that many emails coming out. Multi-factor authentication is huge. The biggest risk to the organization is the employee that still causes over 95% of all breaches. What is ITS doing to help protect against those employees? And how can you help the clients that are on this call?
I mean, at this point, attackers are not really breaking in anymore. They're just logging in, right? We're seeing the majority of the attacks, to your point, coming in through email attacks. They're starting with valid credentials. Identity control is really one of the most critical functions I think that we as defenders need to make sure is deployed. MFA is necessary, but it's not really sufficient at this point. So, you got token thefts happening a lot. We see a lot of MFA fatigue, people constantly getting pounded on their phone to approve that message. Current bar, you mentioned, Jason, phishing resistant MFA, passwordless, conditional access, least privilege, email, still very common vector. So make sure you have your right DMARC, DKIM, SPF frameworks, some kind of AI detection tool that will detect a business email compromise. That's very frequently, it's like we see that a ton. And then having the right monitoring in place, manage detection and response, making sure that you're going ahead and looking at what are the domains of threat. Well, you got endpoints, computers, laptop servers. You have stuff that's happening on the network. Wi-Fi, mobile devices, Internet of Things, network devices, infrastructure devices, and then your cloud applications, your Office 365, your Google, your AWS, Azure, Salesforce, Box, Dropbox, Duo, Okta, making sure you have real-time notifications over all those systems, ideally in a holistic manner, and isolation techniques. If someone gets their account compromised, hey, we're going ahead and disabling that in real time and preventing that down level, business email compromise and all the associated issues that come with that. Training, super critical. A lot of companies are still not doing that in a reliable way. Comes back ultimately, what's most successful in a security awareness training program? It's got to start from the top. Leaders have to lead walk the walk, talk the talk. They're the ones who are satisfying and going through the training themselves, setting the bar for the team members, having some sort of gamification in place to go ahead and get people engaged, having not a culture of blame, but a culture of sharing and community. How do we go ahead and empower our team members to be that first line of defense? So when they see that phishing email and related malware attempt, et cetera, they can start to recognize it and kind of raise their hand and identify that stuff, and then being able to reward them because they're noticing that and they're helping our business and protect our own data. So those are things that we've seen that fundamentally provide more protection and help reduce the incidence of cyber attack and so forth that we're seeing out there right now.
I love it.
I would just add to that real quick. It's funny because certainly the users are the softest target. However, I've seen some very sophisticated attacks stop at a user, like right before a bank transfer or something. And so the right type of training can also beat all these attacks that are changing every day, right? It's a cat and mouse game. And I think, insurance mandates certain things that usually will bring up the floor for the unregulated industries or soon to be regulated industries. And that, a while back, that was MFA. Everybody all of a sudden, oh, I care about MFA. I really need it in. And then that was EDR, right? Endpoint detection response. They're saying, hey, we got to show us EDR. I'm now seeing more, hey, show me your training. Like, show me some training logs to see that your people are actually training. And the one that we're starting to see come up now is XDR, or, are you watching your cloud? Because that's really the surface area that's hanging out there, the surface area of attack that no matter who you are, you've got that open to the world probably. And so it is kind of the attack surface that you need to make sure. If you don't have XDR and you don't have a good SOC that has some kind of like XDR just being extended detection response, meaning anything in the cloud or beyond that one, the desktop, you really at this point, most organizations should have that. And you should have a SIM of some sort, right? A collection and aggregating of those logs that would usually happen with your SOC, your security operations center. And so I think that all enables that, behavioral, otherwise we can't catch the behavioral. That's gotten very good though. We can see things almost immediately and stop them, and preemptively see certain things too, which is very good.
So, Rob, you brought up an interesting point on security awareness training. Do you know that Gartner says that we make employees spend only 49 minutes a year doing cybersecurity awareness training, yet there's still 95% of all breaches caused by humans, which is crazy. Okay, so let's talk about SMB for a second. One of the biggest things you talked about, Sean, if I want to build EDR, launch EDR, and then put MDR and have my own SOC, you're talking I need 9 people, and it's a budget of $2 million to build it, and that's just doing the software and the people. And then, you're not always experts. And every time we talk to clients, they struggle with either lack of budget, inferior technology, or inferior resources. And let's face it, the CFO and the board don't always approve additional IT resources, but they'll approve additional budget to help protect if you can. But a lot of times, cybersecurity isn't cost savings, it's cost prevention. So let's talk about that SMB play. How do we help, from ITS's perspective, help that smaller customer implementing EDR, giving them MDR, giving them SOC, giving them resources? Because I feel like you guys can do it at a budget almost better than anybody, especially ones that just don't have the resources to do it themselves. Are you seeing clients still try to do it themselves, or are they saying, hey, we need to offload this?
I think we're seeing more and more companies needing or wanting to offload it. It's too hard to find the right talent and retain that talent. This basically is, ITS's core mission fundamentally. A family run, like say like 100-person company that they're not going to be able to afford a $250,000 security, information security officer. They're not going to be able to staff a 24/7 SOC, to your point earlier, Jason. And they're also not going to be able to afford that enterprise tooling. But, attackers don't wait for that stuff. So they're continuing to attack, right? So, the managed security model that we offer kind of fixes that economics. So you have, a fractional chief information security officer. You're getting enterprise grade detection and response. You're getting a pre-integrated and vetted framework, and it's for a predictable monthly cost and investment. Um, you know, I think the other thing to consider too is that, especially for regulated industries, that those investments that we're talking about here also kind of function as double duty. So that same investment is going to count towards your HIPAA, FTC safeguards, and CMMC investments and so forth. If you happen to already be working with an existing MSP or provider, we're able to kind of work alongside that group. We've been able to go ahead and help them from a cybersecurity compliance perspective, kind of higher advanced cybersecurity protection perspective as well, be able to kind of augment some missing pieces that maybe they don't have. And then kind of help with leading kind of an AI transformation system that we kind of talked about earlier. So we're able to kind of work with, kind of scenarios depending on size of business and flexible as to how the service is delivered. So I'll kind of pause there in case you want to add anything there, Sean.
Well, as someone that does a lot of fractional CISO work and has a team that does it, I can say that sometimes the budget isn't there. That's very common. I mean, there's not unlimited funds for any organization, no matter what size, right? But sometimes it's there. It's just been spent on other things that maybe shouldn't have been a priority. And so that's kind of your tool fragmentation and sprawl that you're talking about in the first question we discussed. I think you just need someone that can look at it holistically overall and say, is this the right solution? Because a lot of times over time it gets added. If you have internal IT at all, or a person that owns that, right? Maybe a chief operating officer, or sometimes it's CFOs we're dealing with. They're not ever taking a moment to take a beat and look at the overall picture and understand the impact. And that goes back to your risk assessment. Hey, if you do a risk assessment, how are these things mitigating the risk? Because that's what you have to do then. You need to, retain, you need to transfer it through insurance. You need to see if you can mitigate it in some fashion. And that's what those controls are meant to do. But most organizations, it's probably about 4 tools that they actually need, and they need to be set up correctly before they worry about anything else. So a lot of times we're going in and saying, hey, we're not getting everything out of this that we should. Let's, you've been trying to implement this thing over here. Let's go ahead and pull that off the stack for now. Let's get everything that we should out of this tool, and then we'll expand from that. And then getting back to what risk are we actually dealing with here to make sure we keep the directive in mind of what we're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, I love that. There's a lot of challenges that IT decision makers have, and we're struggling with silly things like POTS line replacement. And thanks Broadcom for making us move from VCF 8 to VCF 9. So a lot of different challenges there. What is exciting about 2027 and into the future? Where do you see things going from a cybersecurity perspective? What's next? Are we ready for quantum computing? What are you most excited about? Sean, start with you. Like what's the thing that you're seeing that you're going to start to implement, and that's the buzz for 2027 beyond?
Yeah, I love the quantum computing one. No, we're not ready for quantum computing. Yeah, I mean, I think the big one that I'm seeing, and yes, I am seeing specific boardrooms in specific areas. So, but a big flow down of obligations and requirements coming from your like prime contractors or larger organizations that keeps going downhill. So that means the things that maybe only a larger organization had to do in the past, you go, I remember talking to people that said a SOC or even an EDR, you know what, that's too much for us. Like we're good with antivirus. This is years ago, right? And so today, those things, what got you through yesterday won't get you through today. And then there'll be something tomorrow. And I think the biggest accelerator that we can point to specifically, right, is AI. So AI has accelerated the attacks that are coming, and any kind of weak link in your chain, in your fence, right, is going to be taken advantage of when maybe before they wouldn't have paid attention to you. And so we're seeing that with as soon as a new vulnerability is published now, the time from vulnerability being found, a 0-day to exploit is shrunk quite a bit now. And you really can't have these programs that have no ownership, that we talk about we're doing it, but we maybe don't do it all the time. You're just going to create those gaps. And I think everybody's seeing that. So you're seeing that across the board with the regulations too. And even though we had a pause on CMMC, on the C3PO, right, the assessment being done, the external assessment, there's still a whole bunch of other things rolling out, and that one's still chugging forward too, that we're going to see across the board in every industry. So there's a lot of things being rolled out.
Yeah, I would add a couple things. I think we're starting to see changes in the economics of what it is to be a good defender. AI is really, I think, collapsing the cost of enterprise grade cybersecurity. That is, I think, going to be helpful for the SMB market because now they're going to be able to afford more robust protections. And we're starting to see the kind of capabilities of a larger business and a smaller business starting to kind of shrink. Like you're with the AI acceleration that companies are starting to do. And our model, I think, is just really well suited to help accelerate that and help deliver value to our client businesses. We're also seeing, cybersecurity discussion is kind of moving away from the kind of server room, and it's really going toward the boardroom where it should have been in the first place. And we're seeing that folks that have more of a kind of a growth mindset are really starting to accelerate versus those that are kind of cost minded, especially, got to move a bit more nimbly these days, it seems. So being able to kind of adjust how you deliver your solutions and so forth, I think is changing very rapidly these days. So those that are able
Yeah,
to
one of
manage
the
it.
things I wanted to point out too, as clients are struggling with budgets, sometimes you're procuring licensing and hardware on your own. And if you align with SlimTech and ITS and some of our suppliers, you'll get licensing plus bodies plus help and SOC and additional resources. So don't just always think you need to procure licensing direct. I like the where the future's going. A bunch of you texted that you're actually ready for quantum computing. That's exciting. I can't wait to see what that's going to be like. We've written some thought leadership in that area. So here's what I wanted to do. That I've hit all the questions that we wanted. Tim, I wanted to offer to any customer on the call. We have sat down with a lot of clients and done a whiteboard environment where we'll sit down, we'll look at your environment, we'll then talk about gaps. We'll talk about some of the products and services and solutions and technologies that you have and areas in which maybe you can improve some of those technologies. We'll talk about your industry. We'll talk about things that we can help you with from a compliance standpoint and from a size and scope standpoint on what your needs are. We'd love to extend that. We have over 480 suppliers in the portfolio. You're getting to see one of our incredible 65 cybersecurity providers. For those of you who want that, please, reach out to Tim and David. Also, if you want to create a think tank where we do more of these, or maybe we put you on a group where we share best practices in tech, we'd love to put something like that together where you can just have us as a source, judgment-free zone. We'll talk about technologies, what people are buying, who we're skeptical of, and making sure that you're making the right decision for your environment. Because we know not everybody wants to share their dirty laundry or their challenges with their peers. So feel free to do that in a safe place. So with that being said, thank you, ITS, for joining us today. I'm going to pass it back over to you, Tim.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. Thanks to everyone who made it this far. Definitely take us up on this offer because there's just no reason not to, and we all need to be as secure as humanly possible. I thought as we round this out and bring it to a close, we would just play a very quick game of word association. I'll throw a word at you. You give me the first word that comes to mind, and we're gonna just do 2 passes here. Um, the first one is overkill, and I want to give a little preface on this. I see a lot of small businesses or larger organizations buying too much too fast, and they make these wild investments. There's this overkill. So when you hear the word overkill, what's the first word that comes to mind? Sean, we'll start with you.
Um, it's funny. We have a CSO at our organization that talks about a golden wrench. Everybody wants a golden wrench, but they don't have anybody to actually use the wrench. Yeah. So I would just say, I just say golden round. I'll go with that.
I like golden routes. That's good. That's good. Rob?
Fundamentals.
Fundamentals. Jason?
We got to start with the fundamentals. That's like, start there, protect your stuff. Everything else follows.
Yeah, someone mentioned the SAP, which I agree. I think that's super challenging. There's two different schools of thought. You either hire a bunch of resources that don't come with any technology, and then you got to build it, and you still got to go buy the tech, and then hope that they're can do it, or you get people who overspend on tech, and they don't have the resources to implement, which is where I think ITS and some of our suppliers come in. So overkill is buying things without completely having help to make those decisions. And sometimes people are buying too much, or they're buying too much of the wrong thing.
Mhm. Okay. All right. Last one here. I love this concept, and I think the one thing that stood out most to me was employees are your biggest breach. So I'm going to say the word employees. What comes to mind, Sean?
Also the saving grace. Like I mentioned that earlier, right? It's your biggest breach, but also the most able to adapt when properly trained and catch things that your systems don't. So
Mm-hmm.
For me, it's opportunity.
Mm.
They're your front lines. Empower them. Train
Jason?
them.
Yeah, I would say lack of knowledge. They just don't know what they don't know, and they're too busy. Let's face it, sea level especially. Do you know that most of breaches are caused by sea level? And if you're on this call and you're in technology, you know this because we're running so
Can you say that
fast.
again? I'm going to record it. and send
We're
this to
running so fast, and we're like, oh yeah, my finance guy just clicked on something. We're not looking to see where that email came from. We're just running at such a fast speed. We're trying to keep up with AI, and we can't. And in doing so, we're compromising the integrity of our organization. We need to train our employees better. And I love the gamification idea.
Yeah, cool. All right. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for joining. You have our contact information. You know how to reach out, and look forward to helping everyone else on this call. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.